Actually, it's really nice out here in Wyoming. I'm getting ready to go out on my bike for a while because it's like 49 degrees out here. It's tropical. Tropical, I told you. Anyway, yeah, of course, right when we start, the camera gets to do this little thing. I always love that. Anyway, now just a couple things I wanted to touch on. We're going to do a more extensive show a little bit later. Going to have Mr. Caperton on later on today, which is always a privilege. Looking forward to speaking with him because it's been some time. And he is the one that is pretty much responsible for me even starting this thing. So, if you like the show, all 3.2 listeners out there, tune on in. It'll be a good time, be a good conversation. Charlie's a great guy. And I look forward to having the conversation with him. Anyway, I just was sitting there doing a little bit of looking around, and I got on Newsweek. And that's not really a publication many people read anymore. But pop it up here. I don't know if you can. Hopefully y'all can see that on your screen. But we're talking about Dr. Fauci and other officials withholding information on the coronavirus experiments. Now, initially, excuse me for one moment, it seemed like if you had any inclination to say that, this thing came out of the WIV, which is the Wuhan Institute of Virology, that you were somehow a racist, xenophobe, crazy person. So anyway, this article here, I'm not going to get going with Jon Stewart because I think everybody probably saw that with him on Colbert. It's just disappointing what Colbert has turned into over the years. I mean, that guy, I used to get a kick out of him, and I used to think he was pretty damn funny. And now he's, God, him and Keith Olbermann ought to go crawl in a hole together. They do each other well. Anyway, so what we have here, if you want to get on this article, it's newsweek.com. You just type in Newsweek and Fauci, you can find it. But him and Rand Paul, as everybody saw, Paul was accusing him in Congress of lying to Congress. And if you remember, Fauci said, well, it's not gain of function, and if it is, it's within the constraints. He vehemently denied that he had lied to Congress, and that he told Rand Paul that he didn't know what he was talking about. Well, if anybody would with the medical situation, it would be Rand Paul, being that he's, been a doctor for, 35 years before he went into public service. And I can honestly say that I think that Rand Paul is a public servant because he's probably one of the only ones I can actually even get behind. I mean, he's made some scripts and stuff, but he's pretty much straight down the line, just like his father was, or is. It's too bad Ron Paul never won an election. But anyway, Fauci adamantly said, quote, the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And that was on May 11th when they went at it. And they're saying now that a lot of documents have surfaced that contemplate the denials. The documents obtained by the Freedom of Information Act request show that the NIH was funding research at the Wuhan lab that involved manipulating coronaviruses in ways that could have made them more transmissible and deadly to humans. Now, how is that not gain of function? And they were doing this in what they call humanized mice. And so what they do with those is they take these mice and they're genetically bred to more likely resemble a human being, and that's what they use for these tests. And I mean, this is all documented. So the documents established that top NIH officials were concerned that the work may have crossed a line the U.S. government had drawn against funding such risky research, which I will say that they did do that during the Obama administration. Let's see what else we got here. It just goes on and on and on. I mean, the guy is lying. He's straight up lying. And I'll probably get pulled off for this because you can't say anything about Fauci on YouTube or Facebook or anything like that. But this is an article from Newsweek, okay? Now, I mean, this is all documented. I mean, this is all right here. I mean, he's sitting here denying that he lied, but obviously he did. I mean, he's the head of, I mean, he's the one that, okay, you've got EcoHealth Alliance, right? They received a $3 million NIH grant for coronavirus research and subcontracted the gain-of-function experiments to the Wuhan lab. And then you have this is Peter Daszak, and from what I'm reading here, he's EcoHealth. The activities of Daszak and EcoHealth before the pandemic and during it show a startling lack of transparency about their work with coronaviruses and raise questions about what more there may be to learn. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, from the start, Daszak worked vigorously to discredit any notion that the pandemic could have been the result of a lab accident. When the media was first grappling with the basics of the situation, and here's what's crazy is that Trump shut down travel from China when this thing started really taking off. And that's when this idiot Biden called him a xenophobe and a racist and everything else because he put a travel ban on. Well, now we've got this Omicron variant that in the United States now, I think we've had when did we first get hit with this stuff? It wasn't, it's not been too long ago, but yesterday was the first day that there had been a reported death from Omicron. It was an older gentleman in Texas, and as the article in the Washington Post says, now this is documented. I'm not just making shit up. I can send you the link if you want to hear it or whatever. Quote unquote, may have had other health problems. This is a guy that sounds like to me, especially if they worded it that way, then his other health problems must have been much worse, because for the Washington Post to report it that way, I mean, to even say that, then the guy must have had some serious other problems. I mean, you never know. COPD, probably a smoker, probably overweight, any number of things. Dr. John Campbell came out and said that he thinks that there's going to be a lot of these cases of Omicron not even be reported because people are going to feel like they just have a common cold. I mean, he said really the common symptoms are headache, sore throat, maybe some fatigue. I mean, typical things you feel from a cold. The interesting thing is that this thing has 32 mutations in the RBD, I guess is what you call it, the spike protein. The Delta variant had 5 mutations. This one has 32. So they're saying if you do get it, and as I've said before, they're talking about it like in third world countries where they haven't had access to the vaccines, that this could turn out to be their vaccine because they could gain, the natural immunity, which is what we try to do regardless in our day. I mean, like I always tell my friends, I mean, that's why you want your kids you want your kids out there playing in mud puddles and licking handrails and what. I mean, you don't encourage that, but I mean, you have to build up your immunity to things. You can't just be locked in away from them and think you're going to be okay. And the way they're saying that this whole thing is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, and they're accusing the unvaccinated. I don't know, but maybe a handful of people that have had the vaccine. And where I live, yeah, it's not a very populated place, but come out here and visit in the summertime. We have tourists from all over the world come through here. I mean, this town on the 4th of July goes from 10,000 people to 120,000 people. And we're talking tour buses of Asian tourists and people from all over Europe and, everywhere. People come here from everywhere. It's Yellowstone Park, for Christ's sake. And especially this last summer, and we had a big spike. I mean, we had a point where there were no hospital beds here And there was a couple different places in Wyoming. Here, Laramie and Gillette at one point had no hospital beds. And as of right now, I mean, it's nothing. I mean, I'm not saying that the stuff doesn't exist. Obviously, it does. I mean, but we did have, a ton of people come through here. And it did spike up. And, it is what it is. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know many people that have had the vaccine. Personally, I've had COVID twice. And the second time I had it, I had a prescription for ivermectin, a prescription from a medical doctor. So I wasn't licking horse paste. I didn't go to Tractor Supply and get a horse dosage. It was from a doctor, and I took the medication, and with the Delta variant, I was fine within 24 hours. I was done. I was gone. I knew I had it because all of a sudden I couldn't taste anything. I couldn't smell anything. And that was the first time I got it. That's when I knew it. And the first time I lost my smell and taste for like 3 months, and it sucked. I mean, you don't realize like how much goes into the, when you're the act of eating. There's so much of it that is motivated, I think, by the taste of your food. When you can't taste your food, it's like, you just kind of like, I mean, you don't eat. I lost a bunch of weight just because of that. It's like, why do I want to eat anything? I can't taste it. Screw it. So anyway, back to what I'm talking about here. So I'm just scrolling through this article, rehashing it here. There's a prestigious medical journal called The Lancet, and they're trying to just say that it condemning people that said that it didn't have a natural origin. Dr. Fauci, the little cookie gnome. There's a picture of old Fauci. Anthony, he's not responsible, even though he was the one in charge of the funding that went to the Wuhan lab. I mean, he's the one in charge of it. You can't deny that. So get mad at me, YouTube, get mad at me, Bookface, whatever the fuck you want to do. I don't give a shit. But this is what's going on here. Whatever you want to say, you make your community guidelines about how this fucking Fauci gets up the other day and says, he basically says, I am science. He said nothing but lie. He lied from the get-go. Don't need masks. Then he comes out and says, well, the reason he said it was because he wanted to make sure that the medical professionals all had masks and that they didn't run out. Well, guess what? If you got a public and you think that the masks are the way to go and you think that that's the thing, then maybe, just maybe, now I don't know, I might be crazy here, but maybe one would think that if you can eliminate the general public from going in to the hospitals and being exposed to healthcare workers, that perhaps you're doing a favor to the healthcare workers by maybe they don't have to wear the fucking masks. You fucking idiot, lying asshole. I mean, he's done nothing but lie. Wear 2 masks, wear 3 masks. Now, if you're vaccinated, you're still supposed to wear the mask. You listen to Mushhead, got up there and talked for like 50. I don't know how he even talked that long. He must have had a hell of a teleprompter yesterday to do that because, I mean, I know I can sit here and talk for a fucking hour, no problem. But that guy, that mush mouth, they must have had him all hopped up on something. And but all I kept saying was, get vaccinated. And if you get the vaccine and the booster, and you're being patriotic. Personally, I don't care what anybody decides to do with their body. It's your body. It's your choice. It's your life. Get the vaccine. More power to you. And I honestly, I hope anybody that has had the vaccine, I honestly hope that it does help. I do. I really do. I don't want them to go through what I went through, especially on the first round, because it sucked. It was not fun. So I'm not denying anything, nothing like that. But it's just kind of crazy that all this is coming out now, and it's showing that, in fact, this asshole that we've been listening to the whole time during this whole thing was actually, he was in charge of funding this thing with grant money. Guess where that grant money came from? Your tax money, my tax money. We paid for this. We paid for this. Now, to me, that pisses me off more so than anything. And that's why I always say taxation is theft. Because look at what your money goes for in this country. It doesn't go for, everybody says, well, what about the roads and the derp? Come on. Go take a drive through L.A. Tell me about the roads. They're real nice. Right, Josh? Shit. Pothole central. Same with any city around this country. I mean, even here, you know? I mean, it's ridiculous. Absolutely stupid. You know, I mean, and then you look at the homelessness, right? I mean, really, if our tax money was if it was such a great thing, if your income tax was such a great thing, would you volunteer to pay it? If I came to any one of you and said, don't worry about it. New Year hits, you don't have to file tax. Don't worry about it. We're not going to do it. How many would volunteer? That's what you have to look at with something, okay? Taxation is an act of violence because the only reason that you pay it is because of the threat of violence. If you don't pay it, you're going in a cage. And you don't even have the option if you work a job for somebody. If you work for an employer, you don't have the option. It comes right out of that paycheck. I mean, I remember as a youngster when I first started working construction and shit, you know, and getting the first check and going, you know, and I'd sat there and, you know, I mean, this was way back in the day. I think that's $13 an hour, which to me at that age was a huge amount of money. And I had, you know, for my first check, I had it all calculated. Okay, I worked this many hours. I did some overtime, blah, blah, blah. I get my check and I'm looking at it. I'm like, and I mean, I went to the foreman and I was like, what is all this shit, you know? And he just kind of laughed at me like, you dumb kid. Figured it out, you know? I mean, they just take it from you. It's not like you're going to church on Sunday and you're, you know, putting an offering in the plate. It's just taken from you. Just taken. You have no say about it. That's bullshit. And I think they said Elon Musk is going to pay like $11 billion in taxes this year. After that fucking what's her face, stupid, Elizabeth Warren, you know, was ripping his ass. Like she's got anything to rip anybody's ass about. I mean, how much was she making when she was teaching there at what do you call it, Harvard? One class a semester, and what was she making? She's making like $400,000 doing that, and she was their only Native American female professor. Right. I don't even know how she shows her face, to tell you the truth. I mean, that's just audacious. It's absolutely audacious. How you show your face? I mean, the only reason she went and got the genealogy test was because of Trump calling her Pocahontas and shit. And I don't necessarily condone that in that situation. I think it's kind of fucking funny. I mean, I think he got a lot of people to do a lot of shit they wouldn't have done just because he was trolling them out there on Twitter. And I guess he's out there doing rallies. I was watching, I saw a little footage from one. And there was a guy in the front holding up a sign, big old sign that said, we miss your mean tweets. And I think, honestly, I think CNN does. I think the mainstream media misses the guy because what do they got to do now? I mean, look at it. You got, you know, the Cuomos are out at CNN. They've got all kinds of, you know, sexual deviance going on there at CNN. I mean, I don't even know how long they haven't been a news organization in a long time. I mean, growing up, they, you know, I can't remember what their slogan was, but that's where you got your news. I mean, but you see these Trump rallies, and the footage I saw today, I mean, the place was packed. I think it was in Georgia. Packed. I mean, packed. And he's backing Herschel Walker to run for Senate from Georgia. You know, I mean, something's got to give here because in a matter of a year, I mean, we've got some problems going on here, people. And this dingling is talking about how they've, you know, taking care of the supply chain thing. I mean, I was just watching a deal the other day. These kids are out there on jet skis, and they're taking off from Long Beach, and they're going out in the ocean, and they're climbing up the anchor chains of these boats, and they're abandoned. They've been out there floating. I mean, when those sailors, when those people on those boats, when they run out of food, I mean, you can only sit there and idle for so long too. I mean, you got those big, huge diesel engines, and a lot of those are, refrigerator containers. And so they've got to have power to them. And where do you think they get the power? From the diesel. Where's the diesel come from? Oh, yeah, from oil. Oh, yeah. Those big old things that bring all of our goods and everything that we want from Amazon and all these things we order online. Yeah. And guess what most of those things are made out of? Fossil fuels. Oil, petroleum. I don't even like calling it fossil fuel because honestly, and that's a whole nother can of worms maybe we'll get into some other time. But I mean, everything, like right here, right? Mr. iPhone. What do you think that's made out of? This computer, what's that made out of? The microphone. My Rodecaster Pro over here, the soundboard that I run off of. The seat that I'm sitting in. Everything. All my cords and all of us, every day in our day-to-day life, everything that we have is petroleum based. And as I've said, I'm in no way opposed to green energy, not at all. But here we are. We're energy independent, the largest exporter of oil in the world, and now we're begging OPEC and Russia. That goofy mushhead is having to beg those guys. What do you think they're doing? They're laughing in his face. And they're all laughing because they're like, God damn, I'm glad Trump's gone. Like I said, I've never said I'm a Trumpster or anything like that. But I'll tell you what, at this point in time, I would take him any day in his over this nonsense. This guy said we were going to defeat this virus and blah, 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 blah. And he had some secret plan he came up with in his basement the 50 days before the election where he didn't make an appearance anywhere. Trump's out, selling out arenas and shit. People are standing outside. They can't even get in. This guy's in his basement. And he's got the answer. Yeah, he's done real well. There's more people that have died from COVID during the Biden administration than there were during Trump. And these vaccines that he likes to come out and take credit for all came about because of Trump. Now, I'm not saying anything one way or another about the vaccine. I'm not a medical doctor. I don't have any kind of knowledge other than what I read. I can't say one way or another about the efficacy of them or anything like that. Now, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me, if you've had the jab, well, 3 of them now if you've got your booster. Some places are talking about number 4. So if you've had your 3 shots and they're still telling you to wear a mask inside and they're saying that it's because of the unvaccinated that you need to be worried, then that's a concern to me. Because a vaccine is supposed to take care of it. Like if you get the shot, you should be good, right? Like if it works, like you shouldn't be worried about anybody else. So why are they making this about the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated? Why are they coming out and talking towards, like Bette Midler put out a fucking post about people in West Virginia. I'd have to look it up, but basically saying that, illiterate and strung out or whatever. And talking bad about Joe Manchin because Joe Manchin is the one who has the guts to stand up and say no to this Build Back Better bullshit. He tried to negotiate with them. But they're putting all this pork on it and everything else. You got to think, people. We're talking trillions of dollars here. That's an unfathomable number. Write that down. Just write down 1 trillion if you're in front of a pen and paper right now. Write it down. It's a ridiculous amount of money. It's crazy. And you know what? None of that's going towards homelessness. None of it's going to feed the hungry. How much of it is going for education? It's going to these politicians. It's gonna be just like the last one. It's a straight up, just it's just gonna be a upward transfer of wealth. That's all it's gonna be, and it puts the American people, it puts all of us in debt even further. We're pushing what, 30 trillion now? Where are we at? 28, and it just keeps going because the way our financial system works, we have to have it. We have to have the debt. And this SARS-CoV-2 shit, the fact that we were, not we as in you and I, but as a country, that was our tax money that went to fund this virus. They took this thing, okay? There was one called MERS, right? I believe that was MERS. And the thing had like a 35% death rate. And so they decided to try and basically make this Frankenstein virus with that and the SARS-CoV-2. Now that's really neat, isn't it? I mean, at first we were thinking that COVID-2 was going to be like a 5% mortality rate. That was absolutely terrifying to people. It turned out that it's not even close to that. But, I mean, what kind of people do this? I mean, these are like mad scientists over there. And I mean, I don't know if anybody's seen the footage. I should pull some up. But I mean, you can see these people over there, these people working in that lab, and they're out there with these bats, And I mean, there's no way you're going to keep that contained, And then they try and make Trump sound like he's a racist for shutting down the travel. But then their story is that it came from a wet market. So they're saying that, the Chinese people, they're unclean. And I mean, that's more racist than shutting down the travel. You know what I mean? I mean, it only makes sense. I mean, shrink it down to a smaller proportion. I mean, okay, I live in Cody, Wyoming, right? Powell's 23 miles away. So let's say that Cody has a huge outbreak of some crazy virus. And people Powell say, hey, y'all come on over here. I mean, say God forbid the fucking zombie apocalypse. And anybody watch that movie, I Am Legend? Remember that movie? What was the dude doing? What was Will Smith's character doing? Yeah, he was a doctor injecting people with shit, right? I mean, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that, I mean, the things we come up in the movies and shit like that, I mean, it turned everybody into these fucking zombies, I mean, it's just, it's just wild that, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, not at all. But this one, and especially since I've been sick twice, it doesn't make much sense. From everything that I've read, I try to be informed about things. Sometimes I probably am. Sometimes I'm probably out in left field. But from all the studies I've read, if you've had it, you're like 27 times more protected than if you had the vaccination. I mean, it's science, right? I mean, that's coming from science. But anyway, yeah, back to this article. The NIH fought for more than a year to keep details about the EcoHealth grant under wraps. And this goes back to 2016. So how was Fauci able to, in 2017, at the start of the Trump presidency, how was he able to confidently come out and say, well, this president is going to face a pandemic during his administration? Anybody ever think about that? That was in 2017, okay? That was 2 years before this thing hit. This thing hit in what, November of 2019? At least that was the first, when it first, gained traction. I mean, in 2016, EcoHealth informed the NIH that it wanted to conduct a series of new experiments during the third year of its 5-year grant. One proposed producing chimeras made from one SARS-like virus and the spike proteins, which the virus uses to infiltrate animal cells of others, and testing it in humanized mice, which have been genetically engineered to have human-like receptors in their lungs, making them better stand-ins for people. When such novel viruses are created, there's always a risk that they will turn out to be dangerous pathogens in their own right. Really? Okay, so here we go. Here's the MERS I was talking about. Another risk experiment involved the MERS virus. Although MERS is lethal, it kills 35% of those who catch 35% people kills 35% of those who catch it. It's not highly transmissible, which is partly why it has claimed fewer than 900 lives so far. EcoHealth wanted to graft the spikes of other related coronaviruses onto MERS to see how that changed its abilities. They're Frankensteining things. Look at this. This is Newsweek, people. I'm not making this up. This is not. This is all from paperwork that's out there. This is all documented. I'm not making this up. This is not like just crazy Mike sitting here in his studio just talking mad shit. I mean, as Newsweek says here, both experiments seem to cross the gain-of-function line. NIH program officers said as much, sending Daszak a letter asking him to explain why he thought they didn't. In his reply, Daszak argued that because the new spikes being added to the chimeras were more distantly related to SARS and MERS than their original spikes, he didn't anticipate any enhanced pathogenicity or infectiousness. That was a key distinction that arguably made them exempt from the NIH's prohibition of gain-of-function experiments. And that's why Dr. Fauci was able to say that to Rand Paul, to say that that wasn't gain-of-function. And telling Rand Paul, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, that little cookie gnome needs to go off with Jeff Sessions and go climb in a fucking tree. He needs to be in prison, as far as I'm concerned. I gotta indict this fucking guy. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, what do you do with that? If you create something like, you Frankenstein some virus together, what do? I mean, it gets out, right? Obviously, look where we're at now. Let's see here. Okay, yeah. Scientists at WIV, which is the Wuhan Institute of Virology, conducted the experiments in 2018. To their surprise, the SARS-like chimeras quickly grew 10,000 times better than the natural virus, flourishing in the labs humanized mice and making them sicker than the original. They had the hallmarks of very dangerous pathogens. The Wuhan Institute of Virology and EcoHealth did not stop the experiment as required, nor did they let the NIH know what was going on. The results were buried in Figure 35 of EcoHealth's 4-year progress report delivered in April of 2018. Did the NIH call Peter Daszak to explain himself? It did not. There are no signs in the released documents that the NIH even noticed the alarming results. In fact, NIH signaled its enthusiasm for the project by granting EcoHealth a $7.5 million 5-year renewal in 2019. The Trump administration suspended the grant in 2020 when EcoHealth's relationship with the WIV came under scrutiny. And I'm sure he caught all sorts of shit over that. In a letter to Congress, the NIH's principal deputy director, Lawrence Tabak, acknowledged the screw-up, but he placed the blame on EcoHealth's door, citing its duty to immediately report the enhanced growth that had occurred. So here we are, passing the buck. This guy did a follow-up interview with the Washington Post, and now, they messed up. There's going to be some consequences for EcoHealth. So far, they've not done anything. All they're doing is saying that you got to get the jab, and then if you haven't got the jab, that you're a danger, and they've used this to, form another way to basically alienate all of us from each other. I mean, it's really, quite frankly, nobody's business who's had the jab or who hasn't. I mean, it's your choice. And if the fucking thing works, then why is there even a concern? And if you do get it and you can still shed, I mean, so you get they said, okay, you're going to get the thing and then you don't have to wear the mask. Well, now you got to wear the mask. Even if you're vaccinated, you got to wear the mask. And then you see, Idiot Joe, he's on a Zoom call by him, and he's wearing the mask. What? There's no other leader of any of these other nations wearing a mask. He's wearing it. But then you see him, he gets up there and he's coughing in his hand and then shaking hands with people, and then he shits himself over there at that and falls asleep at that, that climate convention. I mean, he's so concerned about, global warming and fossil fuels. I mean, he just wants to shut it all down. Everything. I mean, as I've said, if there's an answer to it, if there's a green energy solution out there, I'm all for it. I'm not against it. But you show me one of those vehicles that's going to be able to pull my job trailer around with all my tools and stuff and everything in it. Am I going to do that with a smart car? Maybe a bicycle? I mean, there's no way. I mean, I got to have a diesel truck to tow around what I got, you know? And it sure does make it fun when fuel prices are just skyrocketing. And quite honestly, I don't mind paying the higher prices if it means that people are actually out in the fields working, you know? I mean, because that trickles down through our community for sure. We got a lot of guys that work up in North Dakota out in the oil fields and things like that. And the crazy thing is too, our greenhouse emissions, our production of oil, gas, and all that, it went up during the Trump administration, and our greenhouse emissions it went down. We went down. Okay, so not only did our production go up, but the negative effect on the environment went down. And you can look that up too. I'm not sitting here spewing bullshit. These are not lies. I mean, that's kind of funny, huh? I mean, I know for a fact up in North Dakota, they've been doing everything they can. They're working on, you know, I mean, there's constantly real scientists working on these type of things, trying to figure it out, you know? And it's no wonder the people of West Virginia didn't want this thing, because all they're going to try and do is shut down everything. And what's West Virginia got? Coal, right? I mean, those people have already been, Hillary Clinton came out and just flat out basically said, yeah, fuck you people. You're done, you know? And I'm not glorifying coal or anything like that. I mean, there's been a lot of people that have, you know, gone through terrible illness and death and, you know, been extorted and used and everything else. I mean, and that's what you get with you know, a system of power, I suppose. But, you know, anyhow, I don't know. I just went on my little soapbox here for a while, but I just thought this was kind of crazy. I was just reading through this, and I wasn't going to go on the air till later, but I thought maybe some of you out there would want to take a look at this Newsweek article. Like I said, all you got to do is Google Newsweek and Fauci. I mean, it just goes on and on. I mean, it gets worse and worse. And it makes you wonder why in the hell, you know, why Fauci was able to say what he said in 2017 about Trump facing the pandemic. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, keep going through this thing, and it just gets, it gets worse and worse. I'd encourage you to read the article, see what you think, take what you will out of it. But, I mean, I encourage you to do your homework, people. I mean, that's what it's going to take. I don't know how many people out there are really happy with the way things are going right now. I know I'm not. I mean, I think this, you know, I mean, you see somebody like a Barry Weiss come out and say, like, you know, what was her thing? She said the other day, if you speak incorrectly, you're going to face a digital wave of, I can't remember what it was, basically saying, like, if you don't fall in line, you know, we're going to dox you, and we're going to, I mean, you know, what happened to the freedom of speech? What happened to the freedom of being a not only a sovereign nation, but being a sovereign individual in your own right? I mean, being your own person. I mean, it seems like that's kind of been taken away, and it slowly erodes. It's the old analogy of, you know, if you got a pot of boiling water and you throw a frog in it, the frog jumps out. If you put the frog in the water and then turn the heat up slowly, it'll sit there and boil. And that's what we've allowed to happen here. We've become too comfortable and everything, you know. I mean, they say that, you know, hard times breed, you know, tough men. Tough men bring about good times. Good times bring about soft men. and then we're back to hard times again. And it kind of seems like that's where we're going, because everybody's just so complacent in this country. I mean, we're just so used to our little privacy bubbles. Everybody's got their little minivan. You got your 3.2 kids. You go soccer and band, and you just put the blinders on, and you know, you vote down party lines. And it doesn't matter which party you're voting for. And I'm not sitting here trying to glorify Trump in any way whatsoever, because I'm not a Trumpster. But I'm saying that, I mean, I don't like the whole lesser of two evils conversation, but at this point in time, between these derelicts that are, trying to run the show right now, and Trump, I would certainly go with Trump. I don't know where the hell everybody says he was racist. We've got this horrible thing going on down at the border. It's a humanitarian crisis that's going on down there. It's not about people coming from Mexico over to the United States. Fuck, most of the southern part of the United States was Mexico. We stole it from them, honest, I guess. But when you have the situations and the circumstances that this is, we've got a protocol now where anybody flying into the United States has got to get a test. And you have to have a test just to fly, out of the country anyways. And if you don't have your vaccination and your card, now, does anybody understand what that is? You understand the similarities with that, with having to show a card? What do you think the Jewish people had to do during the whole Hitler reign of terror? Think about that. We want to sit here and we want to have the argument that it's bullshit and it's racist if you have to have an ID to vote, but yet you have to have this card and an ID to go eat at a restaurant? No. I think we need to think about this a little bit, people. I think you need to fucking, put that in the ticker a little bit and think about this. How can we say that we're gonna pass, some kind of a, bill about our elections, a voting, some kind of law about, not having to have an ID to vote? What can you do in life without an ID? You can't rent an apartment. You can't rent a house. You can't open a bank account. You can't go buy a case of beer. You can't. In a lot of places, you can't go in a bar. You can't drive a vehicle. What else? You can't probably get an insurance policy. You can't. There's really not many things. You can't write a check. Sometimes you can't even use your debit card in certain places. They want to see your ID to make sure that you're not, committing fraud with that. There's not a lot of wiggle room out there in society where you don't have to have an ID, and they want to get rid of that for voting purposes, right? But yet they're okay with having not only your vaccine card, but then another ID with you. Anybody see the hypocrisy there? Socrates talked about, voting being something that should only be done by the educated. And I think that there's some merit in that. And it's crazy because I'll never get to vote again in my life because I was convicted of something I didn't do. And I try to be as informed as I can. I think that I would make I think I would probably qualify as a fairly qualified part of the electorate. I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm probably just an idiot too. But I don't know. This is all food for thought, something to think about. I'd check this article out, though, and read up on it. Any of you out there that think that Fauci ought to be up for sainthood, I think you're out of your goddamn minds. This guy's a little weasel, and he's taken us all for a ride, and he's been doing so since I think his whole reign of terror started back in like 84 with HIV. So if you don't believe me, do your homework, because I've done mine. Go back and look the guy up. It's all out there. It's all out there. And the thing is, people, we got every bit of knowledge that, our pea brains have ever soaked in recorded history is you can get it all right here on this thing or this thing. It's all right here. I took my kid's phone away from him last year, and I said, here, guess what? You're going to get to learn how I learned. I took a box of encyclopedias that I had and threw them on his. I said, there you go. He's looking at me like I'm crazy. Any of y'all who are my age, you remember how it was to write a paper in college and shit like that? You had to go sit in the library, and you'd be sitting there till they closed. They're kicking your ass out, and some of those, the encyclopedias and shit you couldn't take. You had to do it during the library hours. And that's the only place you could get your information because there wasn't any internet or any shit like this. This fucking thing, everything that I want, everything I want is right here. I tell my kid this all the time. I'm like, dude, there's no reason that you should have any excuse for not being able to do a math problem or figure out anything in a class because all you got to do is get on your phone and Google it. They sure as hell know how to get on Crap Chat and TikTok and all this other shit. I mean, I use this thing as a tool. I hate talking on it. I'd just as soon cut my phone service off as far as calls and text messages go. I just like having it because, I mean, I'm in the middle of tearing something apart or whatever, and I run into something I don't know. Hey, I'll just get on YouTube. I'm guaranteed to be a redneck out there somewhere doing something. And, I mean, people ask me how I learned to do the things I learned how to do. And, I mean, a lot of it is just from using the resources that we have. So use the resources. Do your homework. Don't just blindly go and get behind these people because you think they got your back. None of them got your back. And anyways, speaking of which, I got the kid calling me right now. So I'll be back on later with Mr. Caperton and look forward to seeing you then. All right. Peace out.